Welcome to In or Out, the European Ultimate Federation's show about the European Ultimate Club Series. I'm Ravi Vasudevan here to talk about the Summer Tour preview, which we're getting to the tail end of the season now. Going to really figure out who's in, who's out. We got our first slate of Summer Tours coming up this weekend, and very excited about it. Before we get into that, though, wanted to bring on Nemo, Felix Nemec, up to the show to talk a little bit about what's going on with the streaming platforms, expectations for this weekend, how things have been going. For us. So Nemo, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, busy summer. Just coming off of Masters tournament in Sweden and getting ready for the Juniors tournament in Genova.
Cool. So what can you tell us about the streaming that happened so far this season, and especially what happened in Masters in Sweden?
hmm Yeah, so we had additional coverage with additional VO cameras, and we are planning to include them further. We have yet again learned a little bit of how to make the setup better. So we will brief teams where to warm up in order to not not get the attention of the camera, and yeah, to make the system a bit more robust. We had streams with the VO camera in 1080 quality, which was quite an improvement, I think, for viewability. And yeah, the overall it was quite a success, Masters in general, and we definitely want to work on this more and keep the high from Masters going into Juniors. And yeah, having Juniors as that big of a focus point. The summer tour for expectation management, since you mentioned that already. For summer tour, we have uh, Heilbronn, where we are working to get 2 additional camera people for manual production on the ground. So if you know someone who is around in Heilbronn, please reach out to us. We are desperately looking for people there. The setup is there. The setup from the German Federation is ready. Ravi, you have great experience with it from last year. And yeah, other than that, we unfortunately we did not manage to get the streaming up and running in Sterling, but we will have one field streamed by a VO camera in Warsaw and in Hornsild. So those are the 4 tournaments happening this weekend.
Okay, and that all sounds good. What about EYUC? What can we expect there?
Yeah, for EYOC, we are planning to have all 5 fields streamed at all times. We will start with VO cameras at all fields. So it's the typical AI coverage that you know by now. And then from Tuesday onwards, we will have a manual production with commentary um, until the end. Yes.
Sounds good. Sounds like lots of youth coverage coming up there.
Yeah. I think it's the
Um,
first bigger championship tournament where all games are streamed.
yeah, that's gonna be sick. That's gonna be sick. Um, I wanted to give you a quick second before we go into the real show to talk a little bit about admin and what's been going on with the UCS rosters, and maybe yeah, give a little word to the audience out there that's probably part of the some of the team admins might be watching this. What's been going on this year?
Yes. So we noticed that sometimes there is yeah, roster deadlines, etc., are all communicated, but then still there's they come up. You have other tournaments, other responsibilities, and for us also having all the resources to send out manual emails to teams just very challenging. And this admin work for 135 teams participating in the club season is just getting more and more. It's really tough to keep up with everything. I understand that errors can happen, definitely, and we really try to have as much tolerance as possible. But please also understand that these. So this is a message to the captains and the admins. Please understand that these deadlines are there for a reason. We try to plan our work as well,
Mhm.
and the yeah we will definitely review deadlines and how we communicate them in our upcoming work weekend at the end of August. And I pretty much can already promise that there will be additional changes to deadlines and how we handle them, because the workload is just getting way, way, way too much.
All right, so pay attention to those deadlines next year. Maybe we'll be a little less lenient on you for that. Okay, Nima, I'll let you go so you can go and finish producing the show. And we will bring on our guest today, which is Benji Reese, commentator who will actually be anchoring the commentary at anchoring the commentary at EYUC. And Benji, how are you doing? Recovered from windmill yet?
Mostly, yeah. I'm still a little bit tired, to be honest. Had a wonderful weekend, but yes, this time next week, we shall already be done with the first day of our full coverage from EYUC. Obviously, as Nima mentioned, the tournament kicks off with the showcase game on the Sunday, and then there's games on Monday as well, all of which are available with Veo streams. And then from the Tuesday till the end of the tournament, we have a full complement on the ground for the week. So from the Tuesday through to the Saturday. And I love EYUC. There's something that, just a little bit extra special, I think, about covering youth tournaments. It's huge for players involved to be able to, show friends, family, what have you, what they're up to. I know it's a huge investment in time and in some cases money as well, in order to be able to represent your nation, in many cases for the very first time as well. And it's not something that everyone will get the chance to do. So that, I think, is important, especially because ideally you're forming, friends, bonds, relationships at these tournaments that you'll carry through, not just for the duration of the week, but for years going forwards, both with your teammates and with your opponents as well. And the fact that often you get more family members and stuff on the sidelines, I think makes the atmosphere a little bit more enhanced as well, which is great.
And of course, we'll start to see the future stars that are going to be taking over the game in the European Club Series years to come. I'm sure we'll find out some new names. It's always a really fun part of it. Like, oh, we never heard of this rising star from this random country, and oh yeah, a few years later, they're just dominating all over the European scene. So
it makes you feel very smug and smart. Like, I told you.
You should have seen them when I was talking about them. Great. Okay. So I think we're going to do this show in kind of two parts. We're going to look through the rankings, see where things are at. Feel free to, like I tell any guest, ask any questions of things you'd like. Why is this going that way? Be the audience's question mouthpiece to ask me questions also about what's going on in the rankings. We'll look at the borderlines, who's really on the borders there. And then the second part of the show, we're going to go and start to preview the summer tours this coming weekend, because there's actually going to be another set of summer tours in a couple of weeks. We'll have another preview show for those. So we'll just focus on this weekend for now. And maybe we'll see who Benji predicts is going to get all these wild cards and how the rankings might get all jumbled up by then. So that being said, let's open up the rankings and have a quick look. So I'm actually showing you right now, because since the last show, there's been 2 ranking updates. So if you see here, this is actually the ranking update from July 15th. There's actually another ranking update that we just published today, which includes UK regionals. But this July 15th ranking is what we use to seed the summer tours. So if you see, because we wanted to do it a bit ahead of time, if you see some discrepancies there, that's because of that. But yeah, you can see here that from in the mixed division, which we'll start out with, I think there weren't actually any games. Maybe there's some games down at the bottom of the division. I think just Glasgow 2 entered the division with 1 game, so just bumped everybody down a bit. But that didn't change much. So let's go to the current rankings and look at some deltas here. Interestingly enough, even though Mosquitoes and TFC Talkers did not play each other, the UK regionals seems to have pushed Mosquitoes down to the 2nd seed. They are still, look at that, like 1 ranking point away from each other, which is ridiculous. So I think those 2 teams looking to battle it out at UCF regardless of where they end up. Going down the rankings, not a lot of changes from last show. We do see a couple here at the border, though. Frumix and Forehands pushing into the top 16, whereas Thundering Herd and Colorado going down. So probably this is due to Thundering Herd having not the best weekend at UKU regionals and maybe bringing down one of their opponents with them. Heck moving up 4 ranking spots, getting into the 18th. So maybe trying to knock on that door. Skydis Warsaw, who was at UCF last year, also moving up 3 ranking spots, just in that 17 to 16 bubble. Going down here, Remix, I think, was a bit further up. Now they're down to 23rd place. That's a big drop, 4 spots. Colorado, like I said before, down 4 spots. And aside from that, things look kind of normal. Like they didn't change very much from last show. Looking at this ranking, Benji, anything you want to dig into, anything you're curious about, shoot away. What's your thoughts on the mixed division right now?
Well, there wasn't really much of a change between TC Taucher and Mosquitoes at the top.
Yeah,
it makes sense. Like the Germans feel a little bit better at number 1, given that they won elite invite. So you kind of feel like, even though that's not how the algorithm works, it does give them that position at the top of the rankings. You're right that the interesting zone is the very bottom of EUCF and then the E2CF race. Yeah, you mentioned it. Underwhelming weekend for Thundering Herd. Heck, very nearly lost one of their pool games at UKU Regionals to Sheffield Steel. And then in their kind of semi-final crossover, they then beat Glasgow. So that kind of gave them a bit of a boost and didn't actually seem to have that much of an effect on Glasgow, interestingly. Colorado dropping down a little bit, Remix dropping down a little bit. Newcastle Brown had a bad weekend because they did not make nationals, but have not actually been dinged that much in the rankings for it. BN1 had an up and down weekend. They won the games they needed to win and won them decently, but they had big losses to Deep Space, and they played Reading relatively close, but that's not been enough to give them a bump in the rankings above Newcastle Brown. So they're going to have to rely on, I think, a good performance at Summer Tour if they want to take an E2CF spot or better.
I like to look at the matchups at the margin. Interesting enough, the margins here are both fellow country teams.
So tight.
So we got Poland, and UK here. So let's see what Four Hands and Sky This are looking like and what the difference is. Oh, Four Hands is first alphabetically, so it's already in there for me.
Very helpful.
That's very nice. Sky This, of course, is expected to drop. Rating difference of 0.26. What? That's insane. And funnily enough, you see Sky This actually won against Four Hands in the Wrocław invite. But yeah, they're basically... Let's look at the plot here. Yeah, the lines are dead on. We see Sky This with a bit lower low. What was this game? Only beating Transylvania Ultimate 15-11 is their worst game. Here we have the loss to Leftovers as Four Hands' worst game. So these two teams just duking it out. So we'll have to keep a keen eye on where they are in the summer tours because I think, yeah, they could easily flip based on how things are going there. And what was the other cutoff? It was BN1 and...
Newcastle Brown.
BN1 and Newcastle Brown. So Newcastle Brown a bit higher than BN1, 67 rating points, a bigger margin there. But yeah, you can see here that Newcastle Brown has this win over Heck, 9-8. That's their best result. That's definitely pulling them up in the ranking. BN1's lowest is the win over DTU, which I believe, you would guess after they get their full games, and that would be removed as a blowout, so that they could actually, that'll actually help them a lot. Once that gets counted as a blowout, that'll probably boost their ranking a bit. I don't know if they'll quite get 67 ranking points, but
it feels pretty bad to beat a team 15-1 and actually have it count negatively against you. But as you mentioned, there's the chance that at some point becomes blowout eligible. I believe they did meet at Spring Tour.
History, yes, at Spring Tour, Newcastle Brown did lose on Universe. So in both cases, the team that won is actually the one that's doing worse in the ranking at the moment in both the cutoffs. But that's just the way it goes. All right, Benji, anything else you any other teams you're curious about, matchups? We can probably go back to the matchup tab a bit in the when we actually look at the summer tours if we're curious. But anything else you see in the mixed division?
I'm just trying to point out that even though Windmill was not an EUCS tournament this year, teams that had a good weekend, Savage picked up a bronze medal. They beat Pook in the third place game. Good weekend for them. Zurich, they had a somewhat surprising but really creditable silver medal. They're currently in 14th in the rankings, and they lost to Guayota in the final, who are not in the series. But for those three teams, I think that's a huge confidence builder for them, even though the games aren't counted in the rankings going into potential summer tours. Having a big tournament like that with a lot of good quality games under your belt and coming through with flying colours is a real credit. Out the Ospreys Ultimate Team, the Hungarians, they also made the quarterfinals. Again, nothing counts there, but they're currently one of the teams on the outside looking in. And the way things shake out at Summer Tour, they might have a chance of snatching an E2CF spot.
Yeah, and Zurich, that Zurich Savage semifinal game was quite a great one to see. And Zurich pulling out that win. You see Zurich here is ranked 14th. They got a win over the 7th best team. I said it wasn't ranked, but that's going to be make things interesting in the mixed division when we get to EUCF. All right, let's move on to the open division. And again, I'll quickly look at the ranking changes before we got here. So there were some changes. Wall City going down, Mooncatchers going up. Aside from that, yeah, a couple of teams here and there. Ranelagh getting dangerously close to the cutoff is no good. Actually doing very well because they had a game where they beat Chalk at, I believe it was French Nationals the first weekend. And yeah, that's definitely going to pull them up, as Chalk are the highest team out there. But I think that loss to Chalk that Chalk took is kind of bringing down a lot of the teams that played them, because that's a very unexpected result. So I think that probably might explain why Grut has gone down a couple spots, because maybe their games against Chalk aren't as impressive after Chalk lost to Is No Good, if that makes sense. Further down the ranking, we see Echo catch up, Alba going down a few spots here, dropper. Jet Set moving up 5 spots, so good on them from the last time. And Ratrack just on the edge of the E2CF situation. And if you go to after UKU regionals, Chevron moved down below La Fota. Clapham stayed exactly where they were. And let's see, Isno moved down a spot. Smashed staying where they are, even though they had a few games in there. Jet Set continuing to climb up a couple spots, catch up going down. So a lot of interesting results here. What do you see here in the open division, Benji?
Clapham and Chevron seem to forever be in loggerheads with each other, as they are on the rankings here. Chevron, despite winning UKU North Regionals, dropping a place, being leapfrogged by La Fota. There's a very scary proposition where both of those seeds are 2 or even 3 seeds at EUCF, which won't feel great if you're in their pool, let's be honest, even though they've shown more signs of mortality perhaps than in seasons past. You know that potentially they could put it together at the right time. That's scary. A great weekend for Grut at Windmill, where they claimed the gold medal, and they were immaculate in the final. I mean, their O-line did not turn it over once. Again, not counted into the rankings, but especially given that they weren't even at full strength, that I think is a very good sign for them going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, but how good are the players they're picking up? It's just like Tom Blossman, Jason Valley, and a couple players like that. Not that good, right?
It's fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that big a deal. There's that cutoff is really tight at the bottom of EUCF between Ranelagh and Smash D, and I think that will be particularly important, but for one clear reason. Although we'll circle back around to that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll look at the other cutoff here: One Tribe versus Outsitters. Also very, very close, just 4 ranking points away. So
honestly, I think there's a huge bulk of teams there where maybe you say XVI is slightly more out of it, but otherwise everyone from Jet Set down to Smog, maybe even a little bit lower, they're thinking results go our way at Summer Tour, we can get an invite. Like, that is very feasible.
Yeah.
And that's hugely exciting.
Yeah, we'll get it. And I think the second division of EUCF is going to help things out here. Now, one key thing for the open division we have to keep in mind is the fact that we are very much still in a few different bubbles. I checked this before. I believe there are still 3 bubbles.
That's crazy.
That are disconnected. And let me pull this one away here. My computer doesn't like loading these at the same time when I'm streaming. But you see there's a bubble here: Smashed, Fui, 3SB, Outsitters, Zoom Echo, these teams. And then over here, we have Fire of London, from Orebro, these teams. So Orebro is right now, I think, in 4th in the rankings, but it's because they're high ranked among this bubble. So how these teams connect to the big big net over here is going to change. So keep that in mind. Remember these teams' names, because that's gonna play a huge role into how I think the ranking is going to completely shake up once we get full connection of all the teams in the division.
Yeah, the bubbles get burst a little bit at the first weekend of Summer Tour, and by the second weekend of Summer Tour in 2 weekends after, when Urubara, especially as you mentioned, sitting in fourth of the rankings, when not just the teams that they've played link up, but when they themselves link up with other teams, that will, as you mentioned, really link everything up, especially because they don't only just link up with the teams in the middle, but they link up with the other bubble as well.
Yeah. All right, so we will. I think we can move on to the women's division, unless there's anything else you want to. Well, let's take a look quickly at the matchups at the cutoffs. Ranelagh versus Smash is one you mentioned as being extremely close, and it looks like it is. Eight-point difference. We've seen closer. No games together, and we do see that the plots are quite up on top of each other. Ranelagh just slightly higher. It's 15-8 win against Ketchup, really good. Whereas the loss to One Tribe, pulling them down a bit. Smashed, lost to 3SB 15-7, and their win 13-12 over 3SB is what's their best result. So getting the two best games out of the same opponent, that's quite interesting. And then the other cutoff we had was One Tribe and Outsitters. Both were at Windmill, but again, as we said, that didn't count.
One Tribe, of course, were at EUCF last season. They, I think, a few people thought they were potentially somewhat of a paper tiger. They had a good win early season in a single game against Lafota, that a lot of people felt was doing a lot of the weight for them. But then they went out and they performed well at EUCF.
Yeah,
and to see them kind of at the moment only just about sneaking into E2CF is perhaps a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, so we'll see what they can do with Summer Tour about that. But they have this one win against Ranelagh, but you see that's like the error bar isn't even reaching up there. It's such an anomaly compared to the rest of their results. And yeah, win over Hardfish and lost to Costa Rica Grandes 15-7. Outsitters, on the other hand, has an anomalous loss to Frisbee Club Barcelona. And the win over Rumble 15-7 is going to be the one that's helping them out the most. So yeah, these two teams definitely going to be battling it out to see who can get that spot. But maybe some of them are. Well, we'll see. We'll see what their matchups are, trying to sneak in a little wild card win. But we'll get there. We'll get there in a second. Anything else, Benji, on the Open division that you're curious about or want to comment on?
I'm just waiting to see potentially if that bubble bursts for Orebro, or whether they do perform similarly to, same with Cohotes, to 3SB last season, where they were undefeated throughout the course of the regular season, and then things just didn't really go their way at EUCF. And so sometimes, even though you might be ranked high, even though you're undefeated through the season, one of the things in the past where you look purely at records, you say, well, they're undefeated, that's got to be pretty good. But then the algorithm, I think, had a slightly dimmer opinion of it, and then come to ECF, maybe not having that same quality of competition throughout the season, came and bit them. So it's going to hope, but because they're not going to be in that same bubble the whole time through, I think, that will probably give a more accurate representation of where they are as a team.
Yeah, we actually at Masters, Jonathan Angregard came up to me at the after party and then asked me, how overrated are we exactly? And I said, I can't are the rankings at the top of my head, but you're gonna have to do well at your Summer Tour, because I think once we get connectivity, I think this next week we'll already start to see, because I know the likes of XVI and KFK are both in their bubble. They'll be connected at the Hornstill Denmark Summer Tour, so we'll see how that shapes where Orebro are going to be. Okay, let's go to women's. Women's, again, we go quickly to the previous ranking to see if there were any big changes. Last time we ran things, the Cheetahs dropping down a bit, still only have 3 games in the system, but still actually in EUCF range, the second team from BFD. Yaka going down a little bit. Aside from that, not a lot of movement. LMU almost out of the E2CF conversation at the moment. So we'll see how that all plays out. And then after UKU, not UKU regionals for women's, it was the UKU
women's qualifier officially. Every team qualified for nationals. It was just purely a seeding exercise, one with some very interesting results where Smog actually came out as winners They beat Bristol in the final and Iceni in the semi-final, and that I think has given a lot of people some extra questions in trying to clearly stratify the women's division in the UK, because I'm not sure Smog were a team that people had on their radar as being a nationals contender, potential European qualifier. They just about made it last season and then opted not to go in the end because of scheduling conflicts. But they had a great result at London Invite, of course, last month, where they made the semi-finals after knocking off Yaka in the pool play phase. So Smog are a team that I'm interested to see kind of how that weekend benefits potentially their ranking.
Yeah, I think Iceni was not counting it, whereas I think the other teams in the mix were counting it. So that's probably why Iceni hasn't had much movement. You see Bristol's gone down a spot, probably due to that Smog loss. Smog actually somehow
exactly where they were.
Exactly. Actually decreasing in ranking points by 78 points and ending up exactly where they were. I'm just going to double check because I did run this ranking just before to make sure that all of their games from the UKU qualifier are included. And I do have 3 games for them. That looks about right. So I think that the games are all in the system, including this 11-9 win. But they did also lose to Bristol earlier in the tournament, I guess, 11-15, and the win over SICK. Yeah, so that loss to Bristol is actually quite below their average. But the other 2 wins are above. So interesting that they went down in ranking points overall. But that's how it works sometimes. And elsewhere, SICK actually dropping a spot to East Block. And yeah, so it has made some effects. But I think, again, we're going to get things a lot clearer once we get into the summer tours.
East Block are one of those sides who had a good weekend at Windmill, even though it wasn't counted. They picked up a bronze medal there.
Yeah. So let's look at the cutoff areas. Queen Kong and Spice. We'll match them up for a second. Oops. So here, a difference in Queen Kong is they have a few blowout games, where they got blown out to by Shout and Hrut. Those would have helped them in the ranking, but that's why they don't count. They have a nice win over Fabulous. They've got a loss to Malmö. And then in Spice, this loss to Smog 12-6 is what's bringing them down the most. But their win over Örebro is what's bringing them up the most. So rating difference of 53.58, not quite a draw. It's a 15 to 14.8 scoreline. Still very close. But yeah, Queen Kong with a slightly bigger buffer than some of the other cutoffs we've seen.
Yeah, my gut feeling there is that if those 2 teams played, I would back Spice, even if the algorithm wouldn't necessarily.
Why is that?
I think purely just from having seen more of Spice, and they've made some additions back to the roster this year that I like the way they're set up. They played good teams at London Invite, and I think generally I've just been impressed with what I've seen out of them over the past couple of years. And by virtue of having seen Queen Kong a little bit less, you tend to favor what you know, I think.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it. Do you have any other comments on the women's division ranking here?
The thing about the women's division is that there's so many fewer teams just competing in the EUCS than there are. So there's, I think, generally a bit less. There's kind of more inertia. The rankings aren't as don't necessarily fluctuate as much, and because there's only 28 teams, it means at the end of the season there's only four teams on the outside looking in, as opposed to some of the other divisions where you've got 30, 40 or so.
I think one crazy thing, a news item we have to mention, I don't think I've mentioned on the show yet, is the fact that BFD Shout, sitting here at the top of the rankings in Europe, currently do not have a bid to World Ultimate Club Championships because they lost the final of Italian Nationals to Tequila Boom Boom. And of course, we know that women's division can often pick up a few bids late in this situation if WIFDIF cannot find enough teams. But that's a crazy result as it stands, that the best team in Europe might not be going to WUC next year.
Yeah, that's wild, because when the 2 teams met at Spring Tour in Grenoble, Shout won 15-3. So to then lose to the same opponent at Italian Nationals which isn't counted for EUCS, so that's not reflected there. But yeah, I mean, that is an enormous upset that, yeah, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions going on internally at BFD as to how they let that slip. Also, even though they've only got 3 games in the system, BFD Cheetahs, a win against Queen Kong at Tom's Tourney and 2 big losses to Shout, they're currently sat 7th in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, firstly, they have to get to the 10 games they need. And then secondly, they have to do well enough in those games there to hold on to that. But if BFD could qualify 2 teams into EUCF, that's a great achievement.
Yeah, Amelia Durbin in the chat mentioning that the cutoff is soon, and a lot of these women teams do not have anywhere near enough games. So that's also something that'll come into play. Some of these teams might not get to their 10 games, and we saw it last year with Atletico. That was a qualifying team that didn't make it in. So we'll see that. I know that for example, Sharks. I know they're trying to get games in before their summer tour, so they can make sure they get over the hump of 10 games. I don't know if what Cheetahs is planning to do with that, for example. So we'll see. That can also shake things up, of course. If teams don't get their 10 games, they will be knocked out of contention for UCF.
So as someone doesn't have to do any of the admin, how much notice has to be given for these single games?
Yeah, I'm going to ask. I'm being told Cheetahs have 1 extra game against Barcelona. That's already happened. I don't have that. They have 1 game against Barcelona, I believe, in the at the summer tour, but I don't know if that's enough to get both teams over the 10 games yet. Apparently, we have to have 1 week before a single game has to be notified. So there is still time for teams to get their single games in. But yeah, that's.
Yeah, I guess if you budget to play 6 games at Summer Tour and then they schedule an extra friendly at the start of the end of the weekend.
Well, only 5 games are guaranteed right now.
But so, that's the issue, is that you can't count on playing 6 games necessarily.
Yeah, we got feedback that 4 games in a day was something we wanted to avoid more, and then 5 games we could guarantee if we wanted to really make sure we could avoid 4 games in a day. So I think I think a lot of teams are going to figure out next year that you really should just go to 2 EUF tournaments and make sure you get guarantee your 10 games in that way. Don't roll any more dice with going through any other route. But yeah, I think that's all I have to see here for the women's division.
As a side note, Jinx have the wild card from Elite Invite. Mm-hmm. Would you still need to get to 10 games in order to qualify?
Yes, but I believe they are playing a summer. I think they're playing on one of the summer tours, and so they'll get their 5 extra games from there at a minimum, so they should be fine. Okay, I think then we can start to look at these summer tours and have a preview of this coming up weekend, and we'll maybe be bouncing back and forth between the schedule and the rankings just to see how we think things might affect things. But let's start in Heilbronn, and I think we'll start in the mixed division, where we've got BN1, Colorado, Rangers, Deep Space, Disconnection, Frub, Jet Set, Lemmings, Puck, Steamhook, and TC Taucher. Lemming, I believe that's an 11-team format. The format's a bit wild. Some pools, and then go into some crossover with one of the smaller pools, and then a bracket. It's not very conventional, but you have to do something with 11 teams. But what do you want to look at here?
So there's a couple of
all the pools. I think that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. And there's the almost all German pool feels a little bit mean. Those German nationals in open and women's divisions happened the weekend just gone as well. Obviously, mixed works slightly differently in Germany, where they don't where the mixed is a slightly different season. But I think most Pool A to me seems pretty stratified. You'd expect to see TFC Taucher win that pool relatively handily. Lemmings haven't had the most confident year when you consider last year they were the Elite Invite champions. This year they're nicely poised at 9th, but haven't necessarily had those same peaks. Colorado could do with a good weekend if they are thinking about sneaking up into EUCF, because the previous rankings they were in that final spot at 16th, and they've had that little bit of a drop down to 20th.
Yeah, so
The
just
front-
just to speed things up on the show, sorry,
Yeah.
if we start giving a long 2-sentence description of every single team, we're going to be here all night. So we're going to have to be a
Fair
little
play.
more looking at the big picture here. So just looking at things, I think if we remember back to the ranking, what are some of the places where teams are looking to really get themselves up and above cutoffs? I'm trying to remember who we had there. We did have BN1, for example, I know is sitting there in that division. I think some of these top teams, Lemmings, TFC Taucher, Puk, Padova, they're probably pretty well qualified. It's of course interesting to see Deep Space as a 2 seed. That's quite crazy. Maybe just quickly, do you see any room for shakeups here, or any teams that have a chance to kind of boost themselves up in the rankings based on where they sit in these pools?
I think you've got to look at Pool B, where Padova are in 3rd in the rankings, Puka in 8th, and BN1 currently in 25th. They don't even necessarily need to win those games, but if they can play teams close, that will really help them out and should potentially seal up an E2CF spot.
And see, where are Deep Space sitting right now? They're sitting at
5th.
5th, so they're probably looking to have a good weekend. I think you typically want to be one of those top 4 seeds, so they're probably going to look to. They have their eyes on the disconnection game pretty strongly to see if they can punch up there. Okay, I think then we'll go into the open division, or actually let's go division by division, because I think it's good to stay in a division. So I think there's also a mixed tour in Sterling.
There is indeed.
So we'll look there, and we'll show all the pools here. So it is a complete round robin pool with I think there's nothing after that. So it's just the winner of this round robin pool gets the wild card. So we got Reading, Glasgow, Thundering Herd, Remix, Heck, Newcastle Brown, and Glasgow 2, or Gooks YZ, or whatever they call themselves. What do you see here? What do you see for teams to get chances to push themselves up and down?
The wild card is Reading's to lose, in my opinion. Here, if they don't come away with it, that would be a big disappointment. Glasgow, Herd, and Heck might each fancy their chances of maybe pinching it with some. If there's awkwardness and teams don't run the table, and you get 2 or 3-way ties, Brown potentially as well. Brown with a good weekend, it's tricky because they're not getting extra connectivity necessarily playing against other UK teams that you're likely to have already played before. So you're not kind of feeding into the larger system in the same way that you would be in a tournament on the continent.
What about Remix, the one non-UK team here? I think they're sitting where are they in the rankings right now? 23rd. So I know they have their eyes set on, they had the goal this year of qualifying for UCF. That might be a bit out of reach, but if they can get wins over Heck and Thundering Herd, they'll probably help them in that and get some good games against Glasgow, stay close against Reading. There's a chance for them, but it's tough ask for a team sitting down there in 23rd to get in the top 16.
Yeah, especially when you're playing a team that's playing teams that are all from the same country, and again, you've got that bubble that is not necessarily linking up with too many others. But it does help that maybe that Remix have already played Thundering Herd. So if you're looking at that being a team that you want to kind of leapfrog, and you say, okay, well, we lost that game, but we lost it quite close. Actually, now that we've played against them, we've got a potential edge in a rematch at Summer Tour, and then that will improve your algorithmical position.
So if you had to predict the top 3 teams in this pool in order, what would you guess here?
Reading 1. I probably still would go Glasgow 2, even though they underwhelmed at UK Regionals, and I don't know, Remix 3rd a little bit. I don't know. I quite fancy that for some reason.
All right. Okay, I think there's one more summer tour in Warsaw for the mixed division.
Mm-hmm.
And here we've got quite a number of teams. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. So yeah, that's also a weird number of teams. But anyways, we've got Tartu, Turbulence, Sky This, Leftovers, RJP, and Fireball, Pool A. Savage, Four Hands, which Four Hands, again, really, really close to that cutoff. Helsinki and Flow in Pool B, and Disco Bolo, Zoo Mixed, Out, and Oxley in Pool C. So we do see both Sky This and Forehands at this tournament going to be duking it out. I'm hoping we're going to get a game between those two to see if they can get a little bit more direct connectivity to change that really, really, really razor thin cutoff point they have there.
Yeah, the wild card, I think, is pretty much a straight shootout between Tartu and Savage. The algorithm at the moment marginally favors Tartu, and that's probably where I would lean. But again, Savage will be full of confidence after a bronze medal at Windmill. The Forehands versus Sky This matchup, should it take place, will be hugely influential, I think, in determining who takes what could be the last spot at EUCF. I think Zoo, if they can back up their performances at Windmill here, they will seal up that EUCF spot. But there's also the potential that riding that high, it can be difficult to kind of live up to that expectation a little bit. And with a bad weekend, they could very foreseeably, drop out of that top 16, and both Forehands and Sky This could leapfrog them.
Yeah, Zoo is here at 14th. Yeah, but they got a win over Savage under their belt, so I'll give them some confidence if that matchup happens again. But yeah, it's dangerous here in the mixed division. I think this Warsaw, I think, might be one of the most impactful summer tours that we have in the mixed, from what I've seen. So a lot to watch here. Well. If you're a mixed fan, keep your eyes on Poland. Anything else to say? What would you, looking at how these things have shaken out, looking at how actually the mixed division will be finished, aside from single games, maybe, because there still is a possibility for that. Aside from single games, the mixed division is done tournament-wise after this weekend. What would you guess, looking here, would be how things are going to shake out in the rankings? You mentioned Tartu's going to get the wild card, or Tartu Savage is probably not going to make a difference who gets the wild card. Who do you think is going to be on the outside looking in, the inside looking out here at the cutoffs here?
I think the fact that they played each other in Sky This one, I think they'll probably leapfrog Forehands for that last EUCF spot. Is my gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I also think.
Do you see Hecker Thundering Herd pushing in, or and knocking out maybe both of them, or what? Or Zoo dropping out? What do you give some bold predictions here?
I'm not sure that, in honesty, I'm not necessarily sure that I do, just because I don't have a good enough handle on precisely how everything will feed back into the algorithm to say, yes, I am confident that this is going to happen. With a bad weekend, I could see Disco Bolo in danger, but I don't think I think that the gap at the moment is too big. So unless they kind of really had a calamitous weekend, I think they'd probably be fine. I think the bottom of E2CF is probably more interesting in terms of where I think there could be a little bit more movement. Honestly, Remix with a really good weekend, for example, let's say they finished second at, or even better at Sterling Summer Tour, then all of a sudden they could leapfrog not just a couple of places up, but they're actually not necessarily that far behind EUCF itself, and they might be thinking we put our best foot on the field in Scotland, and EUCF is not out of the picture.
And what about, so Out doesn't have any more games left. They already have their 11 games in. I think it'll be hard for them to get from negative 348 to above that 200. They have to have Newcastle Brown and BN1 have atrocious weekends in order for that to happen. So I think it's pretty tough ask. I don't really see the likes of Oxley and Flo pushing into the top 24, but who knows? Stranger things have happened in the mixed division.
Yeah,
I would go ahead.
I'm with you. I don't see it, even though Brown and BM1 are at different tours. So there is the possibility. Whereas if they're at the same tour, then you feel like at least one of them should have a decent enough weekend. I still don't think. Yeah, I think the teams are solid enough that they won't capitulate.
Okay, I think that'll do it for the mixed summer tour preview. Looking in the chat to see if there's any questions about it. Otherwise, let's go to see in open. So I think we'll start in Heilbronn, where I think it's at least the highest level, which might make it the least interesting summer tour. But we'll have some good teams. I have to note that the pools are going to completely change soon, because the air support has actually dropped out last minute, not getting the rosters in on time. So I will just look at the open team list because we can't really look at the pools and how the whole format's going to shake out. We have 3SB, Bad Skid, Chevron, Echo, Prismica Barcelona, Gentle, Hrut, Heidi's, Monkey, and Wall City. So a lot of teams there. I would guess that Wall City, I mean, I don't know. I think that Leifka and Verena Wilson, I heard, are rostered for US Open. So maybe Germany doesn't care about their World Games players playing a tournament this weekend. I know other nations are done with letting their World Games athletes compete anymore. So I actually haven't seen, I'll take a look at the Wall City roster to see if they are full on or not.
Yeah, I must say that there are kind of a couple of separate things at play here. One is the battle to cement that wild card for EUCF. You think most of the teams that are in that are going to be vying for that, it won't really matter whether they win it or not, because you'd imagine that their ranking would be strong enough. But Heidi's were in that position last year. You know, they made the final, and then because they lost heavily in the final, they didn't get the wild card, and then just missed out on the EUCF spot. And Heidi's and Gentle are maybe the closest sides to, and Bad Skid as well. Actually, the three of them are in a nice little bubble together in 11th to 13th in the rankings.
Yeah,
with Hrut actually only one place in front of them. So there's honestly Wall City maybe a little bit further in front, but there's a huge belt of teams that are so close positionally and I guess numerically in the rankings as well. That'll be that'll give us a lot of info in terms of how the teams are looking and potential. Of course, you want to make sure that you get in the best pot possible at EUCF. So even if you win the wild card, you could have an underwhelming weekend and still be a third seed or even a fourth seed. Mm-hmm. Whereas you could not win the wild card, but just play solidly all the way throughout and elevate your way up to a 2 seed and give you an easier time in Wrocław at the end of the season.
I think if you win the wild card here, you're probably going to do it by winning a game against Wall City and or 3SB. So you're probably boosting yourself up quite a bit if you do that for them. Like Wall City, of course, could drop down if they win without doing that well, as you're saying. One thing I will note, though, in the open division, and we'll get into this and maybe some of the other summer tour previews, these gray spots are not safe. I think that the way things are going, it's very likely that there will be some teams outside the top 16 qualifying through wildcards. We'll get to that in a second. So Ranelagh, Isno, Ranelagh and Isno, I would definitely say are not in safe zones at the moment. They would want to push themselves up past there. And that also means that the teams you're talking about, Hrut, Heidi's, Gentle, Bad Skid, if any of them have a bad weekend and end up down at 15th or 16th, they might see themselves at E2CF by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, it is very feasible that a team that finishes outside the top 16 snatches a wild card and relegates someone to Div 2.
Yeah. And we'll get into people's thoughts about that later, but it's the way the format works this year, and that's just the way it goes.
I like that little bit of jeopardy, I'll be honest. As someone who doesn't have to participate in it and can just watch on gleefully from the sidelines.
Let's take a look at Hornsild, where there's only a 6-team format, and I think here's one where it's just going to be a round robin and then a final placement game. So the 1 and 2 are going to play each other. We've got the likes of Aarhus, Jet Set, KFK, Malmö, UFO, and XVI. So I don't think any of these teams are in the top 16 at the moment. XVI might be the highest rated out of the bunch. I'm not sure where Jet Set is at the moment.
Jet Set's just at the bottom of the bid picture. They're in 21st. XVI are one spot above them in 20th.
Yeah, so I would doubt that any of these teams, unless one of them like really plays above the pack and crushes everybody, I doubt that one of these teams is going to end up in the top 16, and one of them is going to get that wild card. You've been watching, of course, I'm a little biased on this one, but you've watched a few of these teams throughout the season. I do know that Jet Set has lost a few players. I know Emil de Riek, I think, went to Gentle. There were a few players in the transfer window that departed. So I'm not sure they're going to be quite as strong as they were earlier in the season. Who do you see coming out of this pack and taking the wild card?
We can immediately discount UFO. Completely useless. They snuck into the top 8 at Windmill somehow. I guess they have an in somewhere. I must admit I don't know what it is. But evidently they know someone somewhere who's doing the right thing. I think the fact that none of these teams are perfect and they've all got some flaws, makes for a very exciting tournament. I'd have Oars probably kind of a step below the others. Maybe with Malmö as well. They've traveled internationally a bit more this season, but we just don't really have very good data on them. They've only got one game in the ranking, so I don't think they'll be. So even if they win the wild card, they still need to find a way to get up to the 10 games, which I'm not sure they can.
That's the one way to save the 15th and 16th teams from, if they win the wild card disappears and then it goes back to the rankings again. So I guess if you're Is No Good or Ranelagh, you're rooting hard for Malmö.
Yeah, KFK don't feel like the team they've been in seasons past necessarily, although I think they can be a little bit streaky, and when they're on, they could do it. The rankings like XVI, I feel like I might back XVI as well.
They were 1 point away from being at Elite Invite at last UCF, losing to Hrut on Universe in the pre-quarters. They don't have Jack McNamara. He's recovering from a bad injury, and I think there was one other key player, I can't remember the name, that is also missing. I do know they'll have a slightly stronger roster than the one they had at Windmill, where they did beat UFO on Universe. I'm painfully aware of that, even though UFO was up at the end of that game.
Yes, but they also lost to the pickup team, so
But that was in a bit of a different stage of the tournament than.
Hey, they all count. I mean, neither of them counted because it wasn't an ECS tournament, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think they're not going to be quite in that shape in Denmark, but we'll see. We'll see how XVI treat the weekend, the upcoming weekend. So you're back in XVI to take it here out of the pack.
Yeah, I think so. At the very least, if it doesn't pay out, they'll probably buy me a round of drinks for the support. So
playing the game the way it's meant to be played. I think we'll go. Sterling also has an open division, a very small open division, and this one's kind of silly.
Very small.
4 teams. So yeah, I think Ranelagh, like I said, is not in a safe position at the moment, but they can make it safe if they just win this out.
Yeah, last time I saw it was a 6-team division, and evidently, since the initial spots were announced, a couple of teams backed out of it. Ranelagh, you feel like this should be theirs to lose. You're the reigning European champion, right? You should be able to win this.
It's been a couple of years, but yeah.
Sorry, you are a past EUCF champion. I knew what I said in my head, and then my brain didn't catch up with it. So they would be the favourites. Smash D are only ever so slightly behind them in the rankings. Bristol, the algorithm doesn't fail anywhere near as much. In fact, it has them even behind Alba, although UKU regional results would put Bristol in front of them. This is very much still Ranelagh's to lose, but because they're in such a tight little bubble, I think it's feasible that Ranelagh and Smash D could both drop out of the top 16, but it wouldn't matter because someone can win that. And I guess all of these teams are solidly enough. You could say that actually there's not a huge amount between the two teams, between the 4 teams, in fact, really. And it could be a thing where on the day, whoever just feels the best can come and claim a wild card, and that would really upset the apple cart and have someone outside the top 16 and even outside the top 24 claim a bid. And that would really get people talking. And there's a little sicko inside me that is like, do it.
Yeah, I don't see Ranelagh losing this. I played them in the Sunday morning game at Windmill, and they looked really, really good. We also looked really, really bad in that one, but I see if they can play that well hungover, which maybe they play better hungover. They are, Ranelagh after all. But if they can play that well in that condition, I imagine they should be. I've played Bristol this season. I don't think we played Smashed. We played Smashed last year. I don't know if we played them, but anyways, from what I've seen, I think Ranelagh are head and shoulders above the rest, and they should clean things up here and take this one away. And in Warsaw, there's no open division there. So that's it for the open. So actually the women's, both their summer tours are happening later. No wild cards awarded in the women's division quite yet. So I think that does it for our preview. Looking at the open division quickly, since we did now look through the tours, do you see any shakeups happening here? Like looking especially at the borders, teams you think might have a good or bad weekend based on how you've seen them play, maybe at Windmill. What do you see happening from these first summer tours?
I was so impressed with Hrut, but on home, they've got such a good record at Windmill, not necessarily always as an open side, but just across the program, that home field advantage, I don't know if it gives them a little bit of extra shine that might be knocked off somewhat. Heilbronn is very much the tournament to keep the eyes on for me. Obviously Stirling, there's only 4 teams, so you can kind of say how much does it even really count. The quality at Hornsild is a kind of a notch below, I think, where even the best teams at Hornsild, you look at Heilbronn and you think, are they getting close to winning that one? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, that is very much for me the place to keep an eye on.
So if you were going to guess, let's say who's going to be in, who's going to be out, like looking at this bubble, who do you think is going to have a great weekend and push themselves solidly into the top 16 here at the bottom in this bubble area?
Gentle, I think, will go up a bit. I must admit, Is No Good snuck in last year. It wouldn't surprise me if they find a way to sneak their way out this year.
Yeah, even with the win against Chalk, somehow they're still gonna not qualify.
Look, I always have faith in teams to not qualify. You know me, but that is the potential. The team that could benefit from that is, I think, most likely to be Smashed D, however you want to pronounce it. I think, they. Having said that, the fact that Alba and Bristol are so low in the rankings, that actually I don't necessarily see Smash D leapfrogging them, and you'd have to look at someone like
Alba's at negative
Barcelona.
122, Bristol's at negative 200, so they need to be getting games above 400 or so points above those teams, which I believe I'll have to look at.
It feels like they almost have to win that tour in order to get good enough quality results.
Alba and Bristol, I would say they would have to win by 15-10 or more to improve their rankings. That's a 453-point boost, and they need to get at least 400 points. That is a tough ask.
Necessarily see that happening. XVI, if they had a good weekend, they run the table comfortably. Actually, that might be enough to get them into the top 16 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona are an interesting one where I think the tournament is so strong that who knows, that you do not necessarily have to win games to get the boost that they would potentially need to zip themselves up the table a little bit.
Yeah, if they get like a close one against Krut or a close one against Wall City or something like that, that could be enough to boost them up. All right, I think that's just about it for what we had planned today. We're an hour in, so that's perfect timing. I will wait a couple minutes to see if there are any questions in the chat. So far, I haven't seen any. I'll look to Nemo to see if there are any questions in the Solid Sport chat about the rankings. Teams going into Summer Tour, I'm sure they want to know what they need to do to win. So I'll see if any teams have any questions. But any other final thoughts, Benji? What are you excited about coming up for the Summer Tour now?
This is kind of always the best part of the season to me. It's the closest you have to like the regionals weekends in the past or in other countries where you get the excitement of the game to go, and in some divisions it really will feel like, in some tournaments it really will feel like that, because they'll be kind of trying to calculate the rankings as you go along and think, if we don't win this game, if we don't win the wild card, we're not getting to EUCF, and we might not even be getting to E2CF. So that kind of feeling, and the fact that you've got loads of events going on at once, that you're keeping an eye at the big picture at a whole, you're thinking, oh, we've not done great, but have they done even worse? Yeah, the kind of doing all the calculations and computations I find very satisfying.
All right. Well, thanks, Benji, for coming on. Thank you.
The only disappointment.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Open.
Sorry,
I was just going to say that the only slight disappointment is that it's only open and mixed this weekend, and women's doesn't get involved until 2 weeks' time. If it was all three, it would be pretty much perfect.
Yeah, we'll get there soon enough, Benji. You're just gonna have to wait and see. It's gonna happen soon. Those Rimini and Wrocław tournaments are coming up soon enough, and we'll get some more women's division action coming your way. That'll do it for In or Out this episode. We'll have the rankings will definitely be updated next week. I think we're not doing a show next week, though. We will wait a week, give myself a chance to recover after my 3 tournaments in a row I'm doing. But I'll publish the rankings and the wild cards next week anyways. And the following week, we will preview the final summer tour and the final weekend of the EUCS. Thank you, Benji. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And I will see you at the next summer tour preview.